Mississippi, it's good to be blue.
All right, SEC Insider hit this morning on the Out of Bounds Show, 105.9 The Zone. We're streaming live on the Out of Bounds radio app. It is new. It is updated. It looks spectacular. Hope that you'll download it if you already had it. Upgrade it. You'll love it. The show is also powered by Superior Foundation for all your foundation repairs. Superior Foundation. SEC Insider hit this morning is presented by Blue Cross Blue Shield of Mississippi. It's good to be blue, the official healthcare provider of the Out of Bounds Show. All of our guests join us on the Sam Adams Oktoberfest guest line. Grab you a Sam Adams today. Sam Adams Oktoberfest guest line. Tom Luginbill, National College Football Analyst. You know, it's weird. Tom's always super busy on Saturdays, and now he'll shoot me a text here or there as he's watching some of the games. And, Tom, I did not see 7 turnovers in Fayetteville, Arkansas for Ole Miss over the weekend. Would you have stayed with Matt Corral considering how well he played prior to that? Or would you at some point maybe on turnover 4 or 5, would you have looked over and said, all right, John Rice, a little bit different deal, but go see if you can cobble together a possession and get us in the end zone?
Yeah, I mean, I think you'd like to see if you can get a spark from the next guy. Maybe there were some reasons behind that people aren't privy to in relationship to why that didn't happen. Listen, it was one of those days, and we've seen this already with some other teams. We've seen Arkansas. People better start looking at them in a different frame of reference than they have, or some other teams are going to get bit as well. But I will say this, man. As good as the Ole Miss offense has been, it's just another reminder, Bo, that if you turn the ball over, regardless of who the opponent is, and if you turn it over that many times, your chances of winning just diminish so dramatically. So at the end of the day, okay, why did Ole Miss lose? Well, they turned the ball over. Right. I mean, that's pretty much it.
When it comes to Barry Odom, the DC at Arkansas, a lot of people in the business like you and others already knew that he was more than capable. And, man, when you're under, Gary Pinkel, who was a phenomenal coach, in fact, some people were surprised that Missouri moved off of Barry Odom last year.
Yeah.
But nobody pays attention to Missouri in the SEC. I mean, we're right here in the heart of the SEC West. We can get to Bama, LSU, State, and Ole Miss in 2.5 hours or less. And nobody talks about Missouri and so on. But now it's been a wake-up call, like you said, and he is really, really good. I don't think he hangs around long if he continues to do this in Fayetteville. Tom?
Yeah, he may not, and especially if they continue to progress and get better and better, because it's very clear that whatever, Sam Pittman has done, whether it's been Kendall Briles, whether it's been Barry Odom, but more than anything else is changing the mindset and I think the confidence level of their football team. That's what has stood out to me is it's like, and I saw that team last year twice. And when I saw them in person, that was a team that folded their tent and was done. They wanted no part of the rest of the season. They didn't care who they were taking the field against. They shut down. And oftentimes you have a house clean situation you've got to tend to. And they'll turn that thing around.
I pick up and see if we can get a little bit better reception. Out of Bounds, ESPN 105.9 The Zone. The SEC Insider hit this morning is brought to you by Blue Cross Blue Shield of Mississippi. It's good to be blue, the official healthcare provider of the Out of Bounds Show. BCBSMS.com, Blue Cross Blue Shield of Mississippi. So Tom, more on Odom. I don't know what's realistic. If Saban moves off of a Pete Golding and doesn't, I guess, promote from within with Charlie Strong, or Ed gets fed up with Bo Pelini in just 1 year, there could be some highly coveted DC jobs, or maybe he lands a lower Power 5 or G5 job?
Yeah, I think that's realistic, and I think he's probably earned that right let's see. I mean, it's still early, but I think the job that he's doing, considering the state of their roster, as I was explaining, they've overachieved. They've gotten the buy-in, and I think that's the biggest thing in the first year of a coaching changeover, and especially a year like this one where you didn't have your normal off season. To get the kids to buy into what you're doing is huge, and I think that probably is as much a reflection upon what the coaches are doing as anything X's and O's related.
In my opinion, Gus is not going to make it at Auburn, and this could be it this weekend. Auburn doesn't believe they should ever lose to Ole Miss or Mississippi State. I like Ole Miss in the game in Oxford, 11 a.m. Not sure that matters, but I expect Ole Miss and Lane to rebound and bounce back. Here's the way I see it. I want to get your thoughts. Ole Miss has the better QB. They have the better play caller. How do you see Ole Miss and Auburn?
Oh, I totally agree with that. They have the better QB. They got the better play caller. They have also, I think, the better scheme. I think the things that Lane does and the creativity and how he attacks you and how he creates the one-on-one matchup that he wants to get his best player on your worst defender is as good as anybody in college football. And I would really question the confidence level of Auburn, their players in locker room, in their quarterback. Because you and I have talked about this for each of the last 3-4 weeks. Bo Nix may be talented physically, but he's not accurate. He's extremely streaky. He's a good athlete. He can make some plays, but more often than not, when he leaves the pocket, he doesn't need to, and then that leads to ill-advised throws. So if you keep turning the ball over, then you're not going to win. I mean, it's that simple, and that falls upon Gus. It falls upon Chad Morris. The real issue then becomes, where do you go? Because Joey Gatewood left the program. He's at Kentucky. What do you do now at the quarterback position if this continues down the stretch and you suffer a couple of more losses? Like you said, changing the coach is one thing. How would you fix the quarterback issue in the interim?
Yeah, I don't know much about Auburn's backup, but you're right with Gatewood transferring to Kentucky. So I like Ole Miss this weekend. I expect them to bounce back. Now, that Auburn job, you got Billy Napier out there. You got Hugh Freeze, who's 5-0. Not sure they'd be willing to do. There's some risk there, but there's also reward because he's like a lot of these offensive guys we talk about. He's a heck of a play caller, and he's coaching the right side of the football, and he just beat Syracuse, and I think they'll beat Southern Miss this weekend to go 6-0. I guess there's some others out there. Do you think if Hugh Freeze wins 7, which we expect him to do, he's still got Western Carolina and Southern Miss. Coastal Carolina's playing some pretty good football.
Yeah, they are.
Vitek and NC State, that's going to be difficult. You think an AD would be willing to take that risk at this point with you at a Power 5 level?
In the SEC, it might be a little soon. Don't know how much all of the Ole Miss, whether it was within the institutional aspect or outside in his personal life, how much that is still looming over him as it relates to this particular conference. With other Power 5 jobs, would Hugh Freeze be an option? Absolutely. I don't know how he wouldn't be, whether it's Arkansas State, whether it's Ole Miss, and now what he's done at Liberty. And you hit the nail on the head. He coaches the right side of the ball for whatever reason. Everybody wants, that hot, offensive guru that everybody, seems to be seeking. But there's plenty of Power 5 jobs. The question is going to be, and this is and it's interesting because not sure what's going to happen in Columbia, but what happens with Will Muschamp's future? Could Hugh Freeze be a guy in South Carolina that is a potential viable option? Again, the conference aspect would be something that has to be determined. But the issue that I think what you're seeing, regardless of what happens on the field in relation to hot seat guys, is because of COVID, because of the pandemic, because of the financial hit that everybody is taking across the spectrum of college athletics. Is everybody going to get a pass this year? That's
No.
going to be a question too.
Auburn's
I
not
don't
going to
think
put up
everybody
with
will. No, Auburn won't. But I think a lot of people that are in far more dire financial situations than a place like Auburn is, they're going to be very hesitant to make moves.
it. No, I agree with you on that.
Yeah.
But Gus losing this weekend, if he does, there's some more losses there. Bama could name their
No
number
doubt.
on him. It just could really get out from under him. And Chad Morris, to me, the pattern's there. I mean, SMU, Arkansas, Auburn, he's just not good. He got hot, and it was fool's gold, in my opinion. All right, I see a pattern here on defensive coaches that are head coaches.
All right.
You and I have debated it, but I want to get back into it. Jeremy Pruitt, I mean, is he really ever going to get that offense up and running? Kirby Smart, Will Muschamp, Orgeron, other than the Joe Brady year, come on. Am I wrong here, or is it more times than not that defensive coaches suffocate their offensive personnel or their offensive coordinators?
Well, Nick Saban hasn't. I mean, I think that he's been the one guy that's made the biggest adaptation to how offensive football has changed, and he's bent and he's developed a different appreciation for it. He's allowed, whether it's been Sark, whether it's been Loxley, whether it's been Lane, whoever it is, for them to kind of go their own way. Yeah, I think the proof's in the pudding for the most part to what you're saying. When you look at the programs that have played for, won the national championship, Urban Meyer was an offensive guy, Jimbo Fisher was an offensive guy, Gus Malzahn was an offensive guy, Dabo's an offensive guy. You know, for the most part, those guys right now are where it's at. But I still place a lot of stock in hiring too, Bo. Who are you hiring the right people? Could you be a defensive guy and just make the right hire at the offensive side of the football? And if you've got good players, I don't know if it matters if you're a defensive guy. The only thing that I think defensive coaches get nervous about is pace of play. That's the only thing that I feel like there's always some form of back and forth tug of war, if you will, on the strain it can put on the defense if you have a couple of 3 and outs. That's where I think you have the biggest, you know, back and forth. But I don't think here's the other thing too, guys. Think about it. In today's world of college football, not just today, let's just say the last 10 years, all right? How are you supposed to get hot as a defensive coach when we're in an era where you're going to routinely give up between, you know, 375 and 450 yards a game, and you might still win the game? You know, in the old days when somebody was really good on defense as a coach and the offensive game was so different then, you could get hot as a young up-and-coming defensive guy because statistically you would always look good. You look at these defenses now, I mean, how in the world why would anybody in their right mind coach defense in college football right now?
That's a great question.
I mean, really, I mean, you think about it, I mean, they got to be nuts. I mean, you're literally scratching your head going, how in the heck are we supposed to do this? And listen, the teams with the great players are saying that. Look what happened to Alabama 2 weeks ago.
Sure.
They don't have good players. They have great players. So imagine being the other mere mortals in college football. Imagine being, you know, think about it. 60% maybe of college football's 130 teams really aren't any good. So imagine having to coach at some of those places on defense.
No. Tom Luginbill, National College Football Analyst on the Out of Bounds Show and the Sam Adams Oktoberfest guest line. You're listening to ESPN 105.9 The Zone. Real quick, it's not working at LSU on offense. If Hugh Freeze doesn't get that offer that he wants, I wonder, and if I think Sark moves on this year. This is perfect timing. He's built his stuff back, all that stuff. So Sark may get in the running for South Carolina or something somewhere else. Again, like you said, if enough jobs come open for these guys to actually have enough inventory or options to look at, like Napier and Sark and some of the other dudes. But if Orgeron moves off coordinators, and neither one of those guys are going to get it done, and Sark leaves, would Hugh take a $2 million a year gig at Alabama or LSU to be the OC, and then definitely be able to parlay that into a gig in the next year or two? That'd be interesting.
Absolutely. Yeah, it would be really interesting. But I would actually I would disagree with you on one point. Outside of the opening game, LSU's actually played really good on offense. I mean, Miles Brennan's kind of turned it around. He had a hell of a performance in that Missouri game. They just stunk it up on defense. So I think the jury's still out on what the ceiling is for their offense for the rest of the year. But I think there's also going to be a lot of pressure on that offense if they don't get things fixed defensively. The defense is going to be on the field the whole time, and the offense is going to have limited series, and that's never good.
All right, fair enough. Blake, you got a question for Luginbill?
I have two parts, Lugs. Don't you think one part on the defensive side, because we talk about Barry Odom, right? What a job he's done at Arkansas. Isn't the biggest thing that stands out to you through their 4 weeks is 13 turnovers. They had 16 all of last year.
Incredible.
The new PFF stat, which I don't know if you've heard, you probably have because they did a whole feature on it on Georgia, but the havoc stat, basically turnovers. How many times do you get a tackle for loss, a sack, a turnover? That's like the measure of defense at this point. It's bend but don't break. Give up 3, not 7. Create turnovers. That type of havoc play, I think, is what you see in the best defenses, I would think. I'd love to hear your opinion on that. And then 2, when you talk about offensive coaching and talk about hiring offensive coaches, don't you think you're better off hiring the best program manager and hoping he can make the best hire? Isn't that what Orgeron for a year, what Sam Pittman's kind of shown you, really what Dabo's done at Clemson for almost a decade now? Isn't that program management with a great OC play caller, great DC play caller?
So I'll answer your first question. I'm going to give you a little homework, and you'll be able to answer it yourself because you're right in what you're saying in terms of turnovers, red zone efficiency on defense, and tackles for loss. Go look at Mike Gundy at Oklahoma State and look at, let's just say, the last 3 times that they had a 10-win season or more. And go look at what their turnover margin is versus how many yards they gave up in a game. It's literally an illustration of what you were just saying. They stink on defense, but their turnover margin's in double digits. And guess what? They win. So if they don't have that double-digit turnover margin and they still stink on defense, they're an 8-5, 7-6 program. It's crazy. The answer to the second part of your question is I think everybody wants that, and depending on the interview process and how good people are at selling themselves, they might think they're getting that. But you don't really know until you get the guy into the program just how detailed and dialed in he is. And I think the other part of this that gets universities and administrations and ADs in trouble is there's way too many search firms involved.
Yeah.
There's way too many third parties involved in determining, okay, well, here's the best 3 guys that you should look at. Well, why isn't the AD going out and doing that? He's the one that's going to be responsible for it. And I'm not saying that you should be anti-search firm, but relying solely upon that to make hiring choices, I think can go down the wrong path and get you in trouble.
Tom Luginbill on the Out of Bounds show. What's a more attractive job, Auburn or South Carolina? And here's why I ask that. Auburn, to me, is the best, most difficult job because of Alabama in the same state. And they pull right now, unless we get a scheduling deal, Georgia every year. South Carolina, Hugh Freeze, Napier, Sark, you go over there, you get the offense going. Every now and then you can go get Georgia and Florida. How do you see it, Tom?
Yeah, I think the better job for longevity and less pressure, less expectation, especially reasonable expectation, is clearly South Carolina. Prestige, stuff, you're at some point.
Yeah.
But no, I don't just know if you see it, but in the last 2 years, South Carolina finally completed what is one of the most state-of-the-art football operations facilities in the country. But they didn't have it until 2 years ago. So, they are an up-and-coming program when it comes to finally catching up with their competitors. So when they're against the Georgia or now, that kid's finally going to be able to see the same amount of resources and the investment that the universities put in that those other schools have. And up until recently, they didn't have that.
And we'll wrap it up with Mike Leach in Mississippi State. What does the film and what do your eyes tell you?
Exactly what we texted about. Until they're going to be able to come up with a way of running the football and blocking three guys with five in a three-man rush, drop eight cover, then we're going to continue to see turnovers and negative plays. Unfortunately, that's the nature of that's the trend. I mean, when you watch them, you can see it coming on every play. You can see exactly what everybody's going to do. You can see exactly how it's going to play out. But not to be able to block it, there's no excuse for that.
All right, South Carolina, LSU this weekend. Could Muschamp?
I think South Carolina is starting to heat up a little bit. I got to be honest with you, man. They might. They're so good in the defensive secondary, and they've got about 3 or 4 dudes in their front on defense that are really, really good. They've got. Here's my thing with South Carolina. They always seem to struggle to make the routine play. Just the play that needs to be, let's just say it's 3rd and 4. You throw the slant route. It's slightly off target, but it should clearly be caught. And they drop that ball. Mm-hmm. That's just it. It's almost like a week in and week out thing that has haunted this offense regardless of who's been in charge. They'll show bright spots. They'll show flashes. But then when it really comes to having to make some plays, routine or extraordinary, that's where they seem to fall short. If for some reason that can change, they're good enough on defense and experienced enough and can run the football on offense to cause some people some problems.
So Pruitt gets run out of the stadium this weekend. He's in